everyone, welcome to our Meet an Expert session. We're going to be talking about, Hollie's life in her early years and her journey. What we found at London School of Childcare Studies that very often people kind of don't know how to get to the certain point, and it is a little bit sometimes confusing. I know when I was looking at into studying early years, I didn't know what course, what to do, especially when you're coming abroad. And a lot of us students haven't studied in UK. So coming from the different country to UK, it can be quite confusing because there are certain criteria, which is really, really strict. But hopefully we can kind of give you an idea what Hollie's journey is, and maybe you can learn from it and maybe get some good idea where you can see yourself in the future, where you can go and what to do. So we're going to be talking about 20 minutes I'm going to be asking Hollie a lot of questions, and then you're going to have an opportunity to ask questions if you like. So welcome, Hollie. So Hollie is our teacher. She delivers home-based childcare, cash and CFE qualification award level 3. The reason why I wanted you to speak to our student was that you have such an amazing experience in terms of traveling and going all over the world, and using your experience and your qualification to get to know the different culture, so if we could go really back, why early years, Hollie? How did you get to early years?
Thank you for the introduction. Yes, I have been many places. I think the reason I started is I was actually a very introverted child. I used to kind of sit back and observe and be a bit like, I don't really understand how either people are really outgoing or why we do things. And I think I was always like that from a very young age. I was very, I guess you could say it was shy, but I was more introverted. And as I just grew up, I just became a little bit fascinated about how we develop as human beings. So when I got to secondary school, they had a child development course as part of a GCSE course, and it was like, well, this might be a stepping stone to find out why we do what we do. And it kind of led me down that route. It was either going down childcare or it was going down the creative, more like the art route. And I just reflected and thought, actually, I think childcare is my way, it is my journey. And that's how it really started. It was more to do with the fact when I was a child, I was fascinated about how we develop more than anything. And it just took me that route. And then I ended up going to college and progressing through there.
Okay. So you did a course, and then you went to do what kind of course did you do after?
Well, I did a level 2, and that was where I was going to stop. I was going to do my GCSE, and then I was going to do a year in college, doing a level 2 in a certificate in early years. And then I thought, well, I'll take a year out and go and do some work, and then I'll see where I want to go. But I actually really loved college. I just found my feet at college and found my voice, and I became a bit more extroverted. So my tutor suggested, well, why don't you stay on to do the level 3 and we'll see where it takes you. So I ended up doing a diploma in early years and education. And alongside that, I did a few placements and was trying to work out if I wanted to go down the school route as becoming a teacher, or staying more nursery and leadership, because I have a fascination with leadership as well. So I ended up doing that. And that then led me to university. And I just went down the route of continuing study whilst I worked in different locations. And my first place was a nursery just around the corner from where I lived. And I just grew my confidence there. And whilst I was at university, and then my world changed after that, really.
Right. So this is, you mentioned the level 3. For anyone who doesn't know the qualifications in UK, level 3 is one of those foundation you have to do if you want to work in a nursery. It's there is a part of the qualification. It's also practical, that you're being assessed in a work, and that's what kind of allows you to be a key worker or get the license to practice. So you are considered as a key worker. You consider interratio in a nursery. So it's really, really important if you're thinking about studying and wanting to have that career, that you're thinking that you might be working either in a school or nursery, school reception, or in a nursery. then it's really important that you make sure that the qualification is the right one. We have a little blog on our website you can find. I'm not sure what it's called, but it's something about not all level 3 qualifications proper qualifications. So I keep going on about it. Some of you, if you've been to our events before, you know that I keep going on about it, but it's really frustrating because there are training providers, there are so many courses who sound similar, might be much cheaper, and you think, oh, what a great deal, but you're not getting the qualification you need, and you're just wasting your time and money. So sorry, I'm reminding you again, but it's very, very important. The thing I want to talk about is it's the fun stuff, or at least it looks to me fun stuff, when you went to Chinese and the China or other countries to work as an early years practitioner. How did you, it's quite common now, there's a lot of early years practitioners who go abroad, but you started quite early on, didn't you?
Yeah, so my fascination, I said it earlier, was very creative and was early years, but I also, I guess, I have adored travel. I went backpacking for about a year, and it just opened up something inside me that was like, actually, I think I would like to do this more, but how can I make it sustainable so I can end up surviving? Because when I went backpacking, I had saved and saved and saved and basically put all my savings just so I didn't have to work. But then I thought, well, I can't maintain this. So how else can I do it? Well, I know what I can do is I can work alongside where I want to go. And a job, pure coincidence, just happened to turn up on my doorstep in my mailbox, actually, from a recruiter that I had spoken to years and years ago about a job in the Maldives. And it just happened to coincide at exactly the right point in my life. And I was like, well, why not? Why wouldn't I go and try this in the Maldives? I'd never been there. It sounds like paradise, and it is paradise. So I was like, you know what? I love cultures, I love travel, and I haven't been there. So why not put the two together? So I got offered this job in the Maldives, where I worked. It was a resort, basically. It had a link with a local island, but it was a resort, and they had a lovely, beautiful kids club. But we did children days and everything that linked to the local islands and everything. So it was a little bit complicated, but I did that for a couple of years. And just through someone that I met in the Maldives, it opened up an opportunity for me to then go to China. And then a link from China opened up for me to go to Switzerland. And that is how my route has gone. I've been very fortunate. I've just had a lot of word of mouth. And I think because now I'm a manager, for the last 10 years, I've been managers of nursery. So everywhere I went around the world, I've opened up a centre for somebody, which has been an absolutely amazing experience. And I've currently come back to the UK, and I'm working in a nursery here as a manager. But yeah, it's just been, honestly, I think people don't realise just how much early years and education in general can open up so many pathways for you. You just need to know where to look.
Yeah, I guess we are quite lucky because education in UK is quite considered as very good, very high standards. So when you have a UK qualification, you probably find a place almost anywhere in the world. How was that from being backpacker and helping at the child club, right? To be a manager, how that journey went?
Well, it kind of just fell on my lap once again, but I guess you learn different ways to survive yourself, as well as how to work within the cultures you're working with. So if you take my situation in the Maldives, when I first arrived there, it was the majority of staff there were Maldivian, which is perfectly fine, but we had a really international place. So I needed to bring in people that could relate, not just speak a language to the children. It was so international. I needed people that could understand their own culture. So I guess I got a little bit of that foundation from my position in the Maldives. And in China, it was a very similar concept, in the sense of, like, I opened up a brand new nursery. It was absolutely stunning. And I was learning the Chinese culture, and then we'd have 5 Chinese staff, and the ratios were unbelievable, and 1 Westerner or foreign teacher. So it was, again, me adapting my ability to understand the Chinese culture, as well as introducing other people into the team. So I think in general, early years, regardless if you live here and work here or if you go abroad, if you start as I did, if you start as a practitioner on the floor, and you really observe and watch them children around you and work as a team with people within the environment, you can actually go really, really far. And I think that's where I just took every step I've ever done, Renata, has always been that I've built from the previous experience. You know, and I just changed it where I needed to. And they are different. China was so different from the Maldives, and Switzerland is so different from China. Being able to adapt your own ability to see the bigger picture and implement what you have in your belief system into it. But you hit something very important. Lots of places around the world love the EYFS. So if you are going into early years and you really want to travel with it, really learn about the EYFS, the early years foundation stage, the framework that the government here use, or settings here use, because once you've got that foundation, you're kind of a selling point in yourself, because other people just thrive on that care element and the education element. You will notice around the world that lots of people can do the care element, but they don't see education as important until they're 6 or 7. With the mixture of both with the EYFS, it kind of makes you a selling point.
And there is a big what kind of first time I went into learning about education, the earliest education, what really surprised me was the observation. Well, I never heard of, you know, you observing a child, but is that kind of 2 ways, isn't it? Not only teaching the children, but also kind of understanding the child. That's quite big. Is that something that you found in other countries as well, or is it, because I found it quite UK specific?
Yeah, they don't do it as much. If you're going to go abroad and you are going to set up, like I did, an EYFS environment, or based of a British kindergarten somewhere, you have to implement that element of observations. But for example, in Switzerland, they were still using the Swiss system, for example, and just had elements of the EYFS in. So observation, yes, it was important, but it wouldn't necessarily be as documented as much as we would do here in the UK. I do think even if you don't do the EYFS, even if you just decide to move around, become a nanny, be a nursery worker, whatever it may be, being a teacher, it's always good practice to be able to observe what's going on in your environment and observe why a child is doing something. Because if you can work out why they're doing it, you can build on their knowledge to make them more holistic in their approach, to make them develop whole. And that's the whole concept of observations. You don't have to sit there writing them hours and hours. You just need to be able to sit back and know when to intervene in an activity and when to let them just explore with their own imagination. And if you can observe, even if it's just a couple of minutes, you will start to see patterns in why children do certain things.
And what was the kind of hardest bit you found going to different cultures, and because obviously you came with we all coming into childcare with our own beliefs or our own bias, by our own history, our own childhood, and suddenly you come somewhere else and it's different. How do you cope? How do you kind of approach that?
It's a very good question. It is hard. So if you take China for instance, I absolutely loved it. It was such a beautiful country and it's such a lovely culture. But they do have a hierarchy system. Grandparents live at home and look after the children when they're not at nursery. And most of the time, even though you're reporting back to mum and dad, and they want to become a bit more, I guess, westernized, because that's why they're in a Western school. You have that culture difference between the grandparents. So I think it's about knowing what to compromise with and trying to sell it to the family as a whole or the culture as a whole. And some will absolutely thrive on it and they'll take it and be like, yep, we want to go this route, and some just won't. But it is fascinating. I think more so for them, I think for yourself as an early years practitioner, you learn so much about yourself. So much about how you're going to speak to people, what you have to do to accommodate for different mindsets. And we have that already here. You're going to get different parents within your setting or wherever you are, and they may all be British, but they're going to have their own belief system. But it's obviously just much wider and broader when you take in a brand new culture. But I'm not going to lie, Renata, my experience from around the world, which I hope won't stop, I hope I can continue to do it one day soon, I have been very fortunate with how many people have accepted me and taken on board a way that I try to deliver it. I think generally in early years, doesn't matter where you work, if you can demonstrate to everyone that the interest of the child is your main focus, most people are going to help you and support you and work with you, because at the end of the day, all they want their child to be happy and healthy, right?
Yeah, yeah.
People have been really open-minded about it, which is lovely.
Oh, that's great. That's great. And as you say, if they are sending their child to a foreign kind of nursery with slightly different things, they are looking for something different. They want something different.
Yeah.
That's very, very interesting. And tell us about your biggest stresses traveling kind of and working with the parents from all over the world.
Well, I think the stress you have to take this on, take away the early years. I think also remember, if you are traveling, the relocating itself is something you really have to consider. Okay, so just put that out there. I know it's not necessarily to do with early years, but you do need to consider that if you're deciding to go abroad, because it is something very different. You're new to something. I think that does link with the job that you go into, because if you go abroad to work, you arrive in this place you've never been to, you move into your apartment, and then you literally a few days later you move into your new job. So you're learning a new job, a new culture, a new environment. So I think you have to give yourself time to adjust. I am very much like this. I think you've got to know me. I am constantly, to a degree, on the go, which is my personality. I think I like to be busy. But I think after about 3 months, you sit back and you think, oh, like, I've now got used to my environment. The job has become a little bit easier because I know where things are and who I'm talking to, and I know where I'm living. So I think the stresses it does rub off from your environment it can lead into your early years. But I'm not going to lie, the stresses of being in early years, I feel very blessed. I think I don't have so many, like I said earlier. I think as long as you can understand that, or get the parents to understand you are there to help their children in a good, positive way, most of the time it's a positive outcome.
Yeah, that's great. And it's interesting you're saying the 3 months, because I remember when I came in 1996 to UK as an au pair, I couldn't speak very much English. And I hated it here. I absolutely hate it. I just thought, there's never, ever I'm going to stay here. I'm still here, by the way, 25 years on or something. And lots of people were telling me, 3 months, just wait, stay 3 months until things come down and all these things, you find your way around, you make friends, you kind of understand what is happening, and it's going to become easier. Here I am. It became easier. So yeah,
gives you a thicker skin as well, so to speak. Like, if you look at different cultures, I think the British culture, and I am British, so I say my place in my heart, they're not so direct as other people, and that can be a bit frustrating. I even find it as a British person. It's like, well, just say it as it is, because if it's black or white, and I don't get easily offended, so say it as it is, and I can help you. I'll find you a solution. I loved that about outside world, is that they are what they are. It's like, this is the answer, take it or leave it. So if you are on the reverse, I know I'm talking about leaving the UK, but if you're on the reverse and you've moved to the UK like you have, also think of it that way. So don't be too daunted by some of the British people. If you don't understand something they've said, tell them. They're not going to be offended. We're just very wishy-washy. I don't know if that makes sense, but
yeah, I know. I remember when people used to ask me, how are you? And I was like, oh yeah, my mum, my dad, my brother, and I started to go on and go. And they were like, oh, I just asked, how are you? And it took me some time until I learned. You probably know, it's very common for Eastern Europeans actually to kind of spill all the beans.
It's also very common for a British person to say to you, hello, how you doing? But not show that they're listening, because it's their way of saying hello. And I have a lot of people abroad that used to say to me, I don't understand British people. Why do they say, are you okay? Or hello, and then walk away? And it's like, because it's our way of saying hello. Hi, you're right. And move on.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's quite interesting. But yeah, that's the way it is. Yeah. So In terms of your days when you work in the nursery in China, Switzerland, Maldives, would your days be any different? The structure of the day, do they do things differently?
So with my one in China and Switzerland's probably easiest ones because they're the ones I kind of set up. So the ones in China, for example, it was 8 till 5. So it's like the UK have a lot longer hours. Like the current one I'm in at the moment in the UK is 7 till 7. Okay. So I was very fortunate. I had a very strong team and we would all get there. I'd get there a bit early, but their hours were 8 till 5. So everyone did the same hours. And that was, but the children came in from 8:30, 8:45 until 4:30. So either side of those hours, they would be in class, which gave me time to also visit the class. So I'd be observing teachers. I would be also covering if I needed to with helping with the children. I would also have a percentage of my day where I was in the office. It just depends on your roles and responsibilities. So if you're a manager, obviously you're going to be more, I would say, if you can in the UK, if you're going to go down the management route, now I would say try to get at least 50% in the office and 50% in the class. And I don't mean necessarily teaching, but I mean that you are supporting your staff members. If you're just going to become an early years practitioner, then your day normally will consist of roughly about 8 hours, give or take. And that just depends on what you're doing. You'll be doing observations, you'll be doing nappies, feeding, you'll be in and out of the garden, you'll go on trips. It's just lots of looking after little people.
Yeah. Is the day slightly different? Do they structure their day slightly different in the
Their eating might be different. So their hours that they eat their dinner. So for example, in the Maldives, you have a whole month of Ramadan. So you would have to cater for, okay, some children, obviously younger children will not be fasting, but some children will stay at home with their parents because of the month and things like that. And if you've got staff around, you also need to be aware of that. So please be careful. Like if you're in a different country where they do celebrate that. I know for in the Middle East, for example, they will only work till 2 p.m. during Ramadan. And then they take the rest of the afternoon off. So your hours are shorter in that particular month. Yeah, they structure it slightly different, just things like sleeping. So for example, Switzerland and China, their children sleep a lot more than the British children do. In China, they were still sleeping up until the age of 5 or 6. And they would get a good 2 hours in the afternoon. They would get their pajamas on, they would clean their teeth. Whereas here, most of our parents don't let them sleep past a certain time. Yeah. Sleep at 7 o'clock at night. So that kind of differs. And I think communication with parents is much more here to a degree. The questions they ask are slightly different. Whereas abroad, it's definitely more educational based because they don't have that system. Whereas here, I feel like it's a little bit more care based. You know, parents might say to you here, like, oh, when was the last time we did their nappy, or what did they eat for lunch? Whereas in China, for example, they would ask, well, what were the activities today? Like, what did he learn? Because in their daycares, they don't necessarily focus on education, they focus on care. And that's why they've chosen to go down a different route. Okay.
And in terms of, you know, we have a lot of problems with the children eating. Is it the same in the other countries?
Definitely not in China.
They like eat.
They love food, but their whole culture is food based. It will depend on where you are in the country, will depend on what their special food is. They socialize, families go out all the time and share their food. So children are really open to the food in China.
So is it because they're much more comfortable around the food?
Yeah, exactly. It's so from the moment they're born, dinner in China is never singular. You wouldn't, even if you're on your own, you're not going to eat on your own. You're going to find friends and family that you are going to eat with. That is just how it is. Whereas obviously here, Switzerland, I wouldn't say that eating was fantastic. I wouldn't say it's bad, but I wouldn't say compared to China, it's not as strong. And here what you also find is it's more that we copy each other. We imitate. So we get to a certain age and it's like, oh, it's green. We can't eat it because it's green. Whereas they don't have that over there. Everything is appreciated. And and it's just a family thing, I think, for their culture is that they eat really well. So food, it was lovely. And the Maldives was the same. I didn't have many children that refused to eat. So that again, interesting. Family orientated. They all live together.
Is there anything else you kind of can remember that was a bit kind of that surprised you and you thought, oh, this is really good?
Within the early years Probably not. I just think in general, people are so, if you go with a positive attitude anywhere, people are generally in this world really, really lovely.
That's what I believe. 99%
Yeah.
people are lovely.
I think you have an open mind and you just be yourself and be positive towards them. They generally are lovely. And I think that comes out on the children that you'll look after as well. But generally, no, I don't think so. I think because my route was international schools, there was an element of foreigners wherever I went. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
I was trying to implement a certain way for them. Maybe if it was the reverse and I just go to I don't know, a school where I have to completely adapt to their way of teaching. For example, Germany, I know for a fact, I visited a school in Germany and they just needed someone to speak English. And their education system was different. And I just knew as soon as I walked in, that wasn't my personality. I couldn't allow children. I personally don't like 20 children in a room that are all different ages. And you just sit back and let them play all day for 9 hours a day and just change their nappies or take them to the toilet. I like to be interactive with the children. So you just have to make sure the environment that you decide to go to suits your personality.
That's big true, isn't it? Yeah, that's always the true about the work you do. You have to be comfortable because otherwise your values, it's just not going to match and you're just going to resent it after a while. And in terms of the children from all the different countries, did they have a different preference in terms of play, the things they did?
I think with the children in the Maldives and China, actually, and in Switzerland, it's worse in the UK. Out of all the countries I've been to, most other countries, they adore outside play. Absolutely love it. It's embedded in them from the moment they're born. There is a saying, and it's true, there's no inappropriate weather, there's only inappropriate clothing. And everywhere I've been, they've always been or had different outfits regardless of the weather. And there are plenty of clothing for them. Whereas I think we are a little bit more reluctant here to encourage our children to be outside so much. You know, I have parents even now that go, they can't go out now because it's too hot. They can't go out in the winter because it's raining. The wind's too high today. The tree could fall over. We are much more reluctant to be outside here. Whereas in other countries, it's like they must be outside. Switzerland has a 3-hour policy a day for a child to be outside.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and they do it's morning and it doesn't matter the weather, you're outside for, it's not 3 hours consecutively, but throughout that day they do hit 3 hours.
So how do you work with the children when they have to put their wellies and hats and everything when it's a cold weather? That is quite challenging, isn't it?
Yeah, so I think a child loves routine. They love routine and love boundaries. If you label their stuff and you put it in a certain way, children
learn.
They do. They follow each other. Children will tell you exactly. You can have 2 identical welly boots that are yellow. They will know which one's theirs. Okay.
Yeah.
They'll get you their boots. They will bring it to you. And when they're young, they might ask you to help them. But actually, the whole point of Early Years is to develop individuals, to make them that comes with encouraging independence. So actually, as they start to develop, you know, you get them to put their own wellies on, you get them to get their own jackets, and 9 times out of 10, you can have 12 children in a class, they'll pretty much know all their belongings, and they'll even tell you if you put the wrong one on them. And it just becomes part of their routine. They know that after, for example, snack, if you're going to give them snack, well, we normally go out in the garden, our activities in the garden. So we're now going to get our shoes, take our slippers off, get our wellies on, get dressed, and then we'll go outside. You just have to have good time management, because 12 2-year-olds is going to take you time to get dressed. But if you put it as part of their routine every day, they'll automatically do it.
Yeah, and the independence, that kind of Aruna is writing here that independence, yes, most important. It does give children so much confidence, isn't it, when they can do things for themselves?
Yeah.
It's
most children will even say, they'll get to a stage where they're like, no, as if they want
to do it.
Well,
me do it.
Me do it. Yeah, exactly. And it's essential that you need to allow them the time. That's the other thing, is allowing them time to zip it up, allow them time to put their shoes on. And if they put it on the wrong feet, it's fine. Just tell them, you know, okay, you can either leave it, if they're too tight, then you tell them and go, brilliant, but we just need to put them back on the other feet, you know, but allow them the time to do it, because they're so proud, and that's how they learn. you know. It's just that encouragement. So yeah, independence is
and the patience, isn't it? Because very often we're like, we want to do things quickly, get it done. You know, for us it takes a couple of seconds, for them it's minutes and minutes, and we're like, can we move on? So thank you so much for that. That's really, really interesting. We're coming to the end. Thank you, Hollie, so much for all your insight into your journey in early years. It's certainly very interesting. Thank you, everyone who stay until the end, and I wish you all the best, and hopefully see you soon on our other events. Take care. Thank you, Hollie. Bye-bye.